A U.S. congressman is urging the Trump administration to stay engaged in Africa. We'll explain why. In a first for Kenya, doctors perform restorative surgery on women who have undergone female genital mutilation. And a ballerina in Cairo finds that Islam and ballet can work in harmony. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin with yet another tragic ending for African migrants. Red Cross officials say more than 40 West African migrants died in the Sahara Desert this week after their truck broke down in arid northern Niger. 6 survivors walked to a remote village where they said that 44 people, mostly from Ghana and Nigeria, had died of thirst. Among them were 3 babies and 2 children. Red Cross officials said although Nigerian authorities could not confirm immediately, the search for the bodies was underway. In one of the most perilous parts of the journey, thousands of migrants each week are crammed into pickup trucks for the days-long ride from Niger into Libya, often with only enough room for a few liters of water. A leading U.S. congressman is urging the Trump administration to stay engaged in Africa, especially as famine, political instability and terrorism impact several countries. House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ed Royce points to Africa's 1 billion consumers as potential markets for U.S. products and projects. VOA's Mariama Diallo reports.
3 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa. Figures from the International Monetary Fund show 2 more are just outside the top 10. This makes U.S. engagement in Africa more critical than ever.
Our engagement with Africa is in the strategic interest of the U.S., not only to address urgent humanitarian aids, but also to advance our critical economic interests, our political interests, our security interests. Now is not the time to pull back.
Especially when countries like China are investing heavily in Africa.
But according to a recent news report, Chinese engagement with the continent may be the largest global trade and investment spree in history, unquote. Simply put, the U.S. cannot get caught watching from the sidelines here.
The U.S. Congress did pass the Electrify Africa Act in 2016 to boost electricity projects on the continent. It also reauthorized the African Growth and Opportunity Act to increase trade and investments between Africa and the U.S.
Within Africa, the GOA agreement has definitely offered African countries an opportunity, and countries such as Ethiopia and Kenya, Mauritius, Lesotho, Swaziland have all embraced that and have quite strong export markets to America.
But whether it's partnering with the U.S., China, or others, experts say it's time for Africa to look out for itself.
Governments are not out to look for friends. They are out to look for partners and allies to protect and advance their interests. Africans are sitting here saying France is our friend, America is our friend, China is our friend, and so on. I am afraid we have allowed ourselves as a continent to be a ping-pong ball.
And as far as the Trump administration is concerned, says Kamara, a new language is needed.
Donald Trump is a businessman. He's the president of the United States. Let's talk business to Donald Trump. And let's see if what's going to happen. Let's talk business to China.
Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, 2 U.S. aircraft carriers have started military exercises together in the Sea of Japan. U.S. Navy officials tell VOA. Officials said the carriers, along with ships and aircraft assigned to each, began dual operations in international waters within the sea on Wednesday. The dual carrier exercises come days after North Korea launched another missile into the Sea of Japan. American ships and aircraft routinely operate in international waters throughout the Western Pacific, which includes waters surrounding the Korean Peninsula. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe vowed to work with the United States to take specific action to deter North Korea. Now, for more on the U.S. military exercises, the VOA's Carla Babb joins me live from the Pentagon. Now, Carla, why are there 2 aircraft carriers right now in this one strip of sea?
Good evening, Vincent. Well, the USS Ronald Reagan, one of those carriers, is forward deployed to Japan, and that carrier had been undergoing maintenance in Japan. So the USS Carl Vinson, the second carrier, had been deployed to the Western Pacific while that maintenance was going on to show a U.S. presence in the region amid this growing North Korean threat.
Are there any other countries participating in these exercises?
Yes, you heard that vow from the Japanese Prime Minister, and I've been told by Navy officials that a Japanese vessel did participate in the exercises yesterday. And let's not undersell how big these exercises are. Each one of those carriers has about 5,000 U.S. sailors on board, and then in addition to those 2 massive carriers, each one of them are carrying a cruiser and a couple of guided destroyers with them. So this is an opportunity, Navy officials tell me, this is their chance for the combatant commander in the region to practice operational flexibility should the need for 2 carriers in that region ever arise.
What's next for these 2 carrier strike groups?
Well, the USS Carl Vinson had been deployed an extra month, in fact, to go up to the Western Pacific. So Navy officials tell me that these exercises are going to mark the end for the USS Carl Vinson strike group in that region, and they'll be leaving the region after these exercises conclude. The USS Reagan is going to continue to deploy around the Western Pacific.
Just a little bit more there. We know, as we mentioned earlier, this has been happening lately, especially after North Korea launched, those missiles. Is there, from what you're hearing, is there concern that North Korea could go a little bit crazier than that and perhaps attack somebody, maybe the neighbors?
Well, that is the major concern. We just saw, and you reported on Africa 54 yesterday, about the USS conducting a successful strike where they were able to target an ICBM, an intercontinental ballistic missile. So the U.S. feels pretty confident that should North Korea try to strike the continental U.S., they'll be able to take care of that threat. However, the problem is, what if North Korea tries to attack Seoul? There are 10 million civilians in that one city, and so the United States can't just worry about itself in the continental United States. It has to worry about its allies as well. That is the concern that is keeping people up at night, and that is why everybody is monitoring the situation in North Korea so closely.
But as we hear from other sources also, is that if possible, they would like to mitigate the situation such that nobody gets to the point where missiles are being literally fired into any country, right?
Right. That is the absolute last resort. No one wants any missiles to be going through any part of any region, and that is why the United States is not only reaching out to Japan and to South Korea, its allies, but they're also reaching out to their near-peer competitors, China, to get them involved as well.
Well, we hope for peace everywhere. Thanks a lot, Carla, for your reporting, as always. That's Carla Babb, VOA's Pentagon correspondent, coming to us live from the Pentagon. Now, the number of countries impacted by terrorism hit an all-time high in 2016. For the first time in 7 years, the United States experienced a decline in peacefulness. That's according to new figures from the Global Peace Index. The report, which measures the level of conflict around the world, also shows that violence cost the global economy $14.3 trillion last year. Jasmine Oni has more.
Dead bodies too numerous to count, violent attacks, unrest, and anger against political institutions took a toll on the global economy last year, costing trillions of dollars worldwide, including in the United States. According to the Global Peace Index, these conflicts also continued a 10-year deterioration in world peace, in spite of a slight improvement in 2016. The annual report by the Institute for Economics and Peace measures the levels of conflict and security. Michelle Breslauer speaking to VOA via Skype.
Now, even though peace globally is improving, we have seen declines. For instance, in the U.S., the Middle East and North Africa region continues to deteriorate, and there's an increasing level of inequality between the most peaceful and least peaceful countries. That means that there's a bigger gap in peacefulness around the world.
Breslauer adds that the political division in the U.S. since the 2016 election, combined with tensions over police-involved deaths, as well as a rise in homicides and terrorism incidents, has caused a decline in peacefulness in the United States.
The U.S. fell by 11 places. It's now 114th out of 163. And that's really due to the indicator that assesses internal conflict in the United States deteriorating. So what we're seeing is greater political polarization amongst American society, greater numbers of protests. Black Lives Matter movement has come about as a reaction to police violence. So that greater political polarization has impacted the score.
The report indicates a record high 23 countries are now witnessing a historic increase in levels of terrorism. Although Europe was significantly impacted with major attacks in France, Brussels, and London, the region held on to its position as the most peaceful. Syria remains the least peaceful country for the 5th year running. Jesuseme Oni, VOA News, Washington.
And back in Washington, President Donald Trump says he will announce Thursday afternoon his decision on whether to pull the United States out of the landmark 2015 Paris Climate Accord. On his Twitter feed Wednesday night, Trump said he will make the announcement during a Rose Garden event Thursday afternoon. Multiple news agencies reported Wednesday that the president had decided to withdraw from the global pact, which has been endorsed by 195 countries. Such a move would be a major reversal of environmental policy established under former President Barack Obama.
Doing something about climate change is bad for business, when you listen to U.S. and international business leaders, they say just the opposite. They say that climate change is having a real impact on their business models and their supply chains, and also that they think they can make money by helping solve the climate crisis.
Well, climate change activists expressed alarm over Trump's expected move to quit the agreement.
From a climate perspective, bringing carbon emissions to zero by the middle of the century would limit the rise in Earth's temperatures and would limit the rise in high impact climate extremes that are associated with global warming to a level that is more manageable. And if we don't do that, if we continue to emit carbon emissions at the rate that we have been, if we take that business as usual approach, the climate at the end of the 21st century is going to look pretty unrecognizable relative to the 20th century climate, and that's not going to be a good thing for a lot of people and living things on Earth.
Well, billionaire entrepreneur Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, threatened to resign from the 3 White House scientific advisory boards if the president actually withdraws from the accord. Not all reaction has been negative, though. A group of 22 Republican senators issued a letter last week urging Trump to make a clean break from the Paris Agreement. Now, the letter argued that remaining in it would subject the United States to significant litigation risk that could complicate Trump's efforts to overturn Obama-era regulations known as the Clean Power Plan. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Well, coming up, how a team of doctors from the U.S. are helping women who have undergone FGM in Kenya. Stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
My name's Carla Babb, and I work the Pentagon beat. That access helps me to do better stories. Every day it's my responsibility to collect all of the defense news. It keeps our VOA viewers informed. I get to travel all across the globe. Anything that's defense related and how to protect and keep people safe, that's where I'll go. So it's never a dull moment at the Pentagon. My name is Carla Babb. This is my beat.
Well, joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Madu. What do you have for us today, Lino?
Kenya's hopes of ending incontinence caused by fistula are rising as more women are receiving surgery. Fistula is a serious childbirth injury caused by prolonged labor without access to cesarean section. Tissue die due to pressure from the baby's head, and a hole forms in the birth canal through which urine and/or feces leak. Women with fistula are subject to severe social stigma due to odor. The United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, says at least 2 million women globally live with fistula. In Kenya, approximately 1 to 2 fistulas occur for every 1,000 deliveries. A $2 million grant to the Fistula Foundation from Japanese pharmaceutical company Astellas is enabling more surgeons in Kenya to be trained and more women to receive surgery. Joining us now via Skype from San Jose, California, for more on the subject is Kate Grant, CEO of the Fistula Foundation. Ms. Grant, welcome to the show.
Hi, Lenore. Thank you.
It's great to have you. Listen, talk to us about Action on Fistula, this program that you've been implementing in Kenya for the past 3 years.
I'm delighted to. We kicked the program off in May of 2014 with, as you mentioned, Lenore, support from Astellas Pharmaceutical, which is a Japanese pharma company. They provided funding for us to do something we had wanted to do for a long time but didn't have the resources to do, and that is to build a treatment network that could help women get treated for this problem now and also in the future. And what was involved with the network was basically setting up a countrywide system of half a dozen hospitals that could treat women 12 months out of the year. Extensive outreach effort that allowed us to get to Kenyans in 43 counties in the country out of the 47. We did over 7,000 events. And in the last 3 years, we've been able to treat over 2,500 women, which is about twice what we thought we would be able to do. We've also been able to train an additional 6 expert surgeons to do fistula surgery. So we're excited about this program because it's enabled us to treat women now, but probably as, if not more importantly, build this human and physical infrastructure to help us treat women long into the future. It's very exciting.
So obviously it was a positive outcome for this program. What is next for the program? What are the next steps?
Well, between now and 2020, we basically are doubling down on what we've done the last 3 years and plan to have at least 4,500 women treated by 2020. We're basically just leaning in with more resources to do more outreach events, get more women in for surgery. We know that, unfortunately, there are women that have had this injury and suffered with it, sometimes for decades. So there's a backlog of cases. We're trying to get ahead of that, obviously, with this robust program, and that's really what's ahead. One thing I did want to mention, Lenore, that's important is we've set up a hotline number that works countrywide, and women can call into that hotline number, or family members can, on behalf of those women, to find out where services are available near them, but also to get an assessment of their symptoms. As you mentioned, Lenore, fistula is a childbirth injury. It leaves holes in organs like the vagina. It's a tough topic, right? So we do have this 800 number, and I wanted to give it to you. It's a hotline number, not 800, but a free number people can call into, and it's the number is 0717-492-526. Again, that's 0717-492-526.
And that's the number for Kenya. But quickly, before we wrap, conducting surgery is part of the solution. How do we approach this in terms of solving the solution to prevent it from happening?
That's such a great question, because obviously you don't get this issue eradicated, this problem that devastates women's lives eradicated unless you can both treat and prevent. And I've talked to you obviously about the treatment side. The prevention side, as you mentioned, Lenore, is equally important. The way to prevent a fistula is to provide emergency obstetric care to every woman who needs it. In other words, a woman that's in labor, where that labor is obstructed, where it's not proceeding well, needs professional medical attention, and that's the way to prevent a fistula. There's other things, though, that can help women have healthier deliveries. One of those things is the ability to plan and space children so that you have women giving birth when their bodies are really ready to do this. That means having babies not when they're children biologically, I mean, in their teens, but it also means giving women the ability to plan and space children, couples the ability to do that so that they're several years apart.
Okay, Ms. Grant. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lenore. Grateful for your time and attention. You take care.
And that was Kate Grant, CEO of the Fistula Foundation. Now, still in Kenya, we turn to female genital cutting. Doctors from a US-based organization have performed a restorative surgery in Nairobi on women who have undergone FGM. It's the first time this procedure has been done in Kenya. From Nairobi, VOA's Jill Craig has more.
It's a big day for this woman in Nairobi. She and about 53 others who have undergone female genital mutilation are now having clitoral restorative surgery performed. Doctors from Clitoraid aim to restore both the woman's anatomy and sexual sensation. Pauline, who wishes to remain anonymous, was cut at 12 years old.
Where I grew up, FGM was like the norm, and all my friends had gone through it. And therefore, if you had not done it, you were ridiculed, and it was really bad. So it's like girls were really looking forward to having it, although we really didn't understand what it involved.
Today, Pauline is scheduled for surgery at the Karen Hospital in Nairobi, citing painful intercourse as her primary motivator.
FGM benefits no one. Men are not happy sexually, they're frustrated sexually. It actually increases infidelity rather than decrease it. Originally it was proposed that this will make you more faithful to your husband, but in fact, because sex is so unpleasant for both partners, men go outside the marriage sometimes for sex.
FGM involves cutting or removing the clitoris and/or labia with differing degrees of severity, often resulting in severe bleeding and pain, menstrual and urinary problems, and an increased risk of childbirth complications. Proponents have argued that it's a traditional rite of passage into womanhood, often in Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Clitoraid surgeon Dr. Aiden Abdullahi says FGM is nearly ubiquitous where he is from in northeastern Kenya.
But the figures are slowly coming down. There's a lot of work going on prevention and education to discard this culture, because it's got nothing to do with the religion of Islam. What the kind of practice that's happening is complete mutilation.
The UN reports that about a fifth of Kenyan girls and women have undergone FGM. And those who have come to this hospital for restorative surgery are hopeful.
And I'm really excited that it's happening. I'm excited, and I hope that a lot of other women are going to benefit from it.
Dr. Bowers and her team are also training Kenyan doctors, so the restoration can continue even after they've left. But they insist that surgery won't end FGM. Only prevention will. Jill Craig, VOA News, Nairobi.
And that's our health report for today. Stay in touch with me for more. Find me on Twitter at Lenore Mudu. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thank you very much, Lenore, for joining us today. Be sure to watch for Lenore Mudu every Tuesday and Thursday for the latest health news in Africa, right here on Africa 54. Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, an Egyptian ballerina blends her faith with her art. We'll be right back.
A draft effectively is to manage one's demand, which is
You can literally tell a story or an experience in board games.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. Dutch artist Ab Verhagen has evolved from creating run-of-the-mill sculptures to inventing a solar-powered water filter. The sun reflects on the solar panel and produces the energy which flows to a cooling pump below the sculpture, starts to pump liquid that ends up collected in a container. The artist is hoping to pursue his invention further after putting the system through its paces in the desert in Mali. Verhagen joined a Dutch peacekeeping mission, setting up his simple solar-powered condensation system in Gao, which lies inside the Sahara Desert. Despite the hot and dry conditions, tests on the system showed it could function and produced up to 8 liters of water over a 24-hour period. Well, next up, a late-night tweet from U.S. President Donald Trump had social media trying to find a meaning in the mysterious term kafif on Wednesday. Now, Trump tweeted just after midnight Eastern Time, despite the constant negative press. Kafif, the tweet immediately went viral and became one of the president's more popular posts. Trump poked fun at the typo, tweeting hours later, who can figure out the true meaning of kafif? Let's see if I pronounce it right. He said, enjoy. Well, and finally, when Angie L. Shazley was a child, she had a dream. She wanted to become a ballerina. Using a pair of worn-out ballet shoes and armed with a steely determination, the 27-year-old Shazley is pirouetting her way in Egypt's cultural history as one of the few ballerinas around who wears the traditional hijab or Muslim headscarf. At first, she had her reservations about performing on stage with her hijab on. But after performing as part of the Corps de Ballet in Cinderella and the Waltz of the Hours in 2016 at the Russian Cultural Center, Shazley knew religion was not going to stop her from fulfilling her childhood dream. She is currently teaching at a ballet school in Cairo and dreams of opening her own academy in the future. And that is what is trending today. Well, that's our show for today. Now be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening show, Radio Show Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings, Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching. From all of us in Washington, have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. When something loses its original shape or form, it does not look very natural or comfortable.
Bent out of shape.
Hey, did you tell Greg about my dinner party?
Yeah, I did. I thought he was invited.
Well, now he's all bent out of shape because I didn't invite him.
I'm sorry.